When Herb Clutter, a prosperous western Kansas farmer, hired a new farmhand, Floyd Wells, he had no idea that those actions were going to change his family forever. And this story hits pretty close to home, and I mean that literally. I live just about 6 miles north of where this story occurred, and I've seen the house. Before we get into that, welcome to Dark Secrets, where we tell real cryptid reports and real true scary stories in an immersive story format. Now let's get into that story. Herb Clutter was a prosperous farmer in a little town in western Kansas called Holocomb. With him at his farmhouse was his wife Bonnie, his daughter Nancy, 16, and his son Kenyon, 15, who both went to Holocomb High School. Herb also had 2 older children who had since moved out and was working on building a life of their own. Herb was known in the community to have money. He was also known for never carrying much cash and always wrote checks. One year, Herb hired a new farmhand, Floyd Wells. Herb paid Floyd in cash every payday, until one day, Floyd was sent to a Kansas penitentiary. He was wanted, and Herb was unaware when he hired him. This unfortunate series of events, Herb hiring Floyd and Floyd going to prison, will set in motion one of the most tragic stories in western Kansas history. While in prison, Floyd met a man named Richard Hickock. They became friends and, as bored prisoners do, began telling stories. Floyd proceeded to tell Hickock how he worked for a rich farmer that always paid in cash, and how he has a safe loaded with money at the house. Hickock was soon to be released, and he hatched a plan to steal Herb Clutter's safe and start a new life in Mexico. Once Hickock was released, he contacted another former cellmate named Smith and asked Smith to commit the robbery with him. Smith agreed. On the evening of November 14th, 1959, Hickock and Smith drove 400 miles across the state of Kansas to the address provided to them by Floyd, Herb's previous farmhand. In the early morning hours of November 15th, the 2 men entered the Clutter family's home through the back door, which was unlocked. Hickock and Smith began quietly searching the home for a safe, but they made enough noise to disturb the Clutter family. Hickock and Smith quickly shoved Bonnie, the wife, Nancy and Kenyon, the children, all into a bathroom. Herb then came to defend his family, but was overpowered by the 2 men and taken to his first-floor office. The 2 men took turns searching the house for the safe. After searching for the safe with no luck, the thieves were getting more aggravated and decided to remove Bonnie, Nancy, and Kenyon from the bathroom. Bonnie's hands were tied and she was gagged, then placed in a bed on the 2nd floor. Then Nancy, the 16-year-old girl, was tied and put in bed as well. Hickock then began to undress, presumably to rape Nancy, the 16-year-old daughter. But Smith claims he stopped Hickock from this action. The 2 men then stomped back to the bathroom and removed Kenyon, the 15-year-old boy, and placed him and his father Herb in the basement. They then tied Kenyon's hands behind his back and gagged him. They then tied him to an overhanging steam pipe. Then, for whatever reason, decided to cut him back down and move him to the adjoining room onto a couch, and even put a pillow behind his head, presumably to make him more comfortable. The 2 men then grabbed Herb, who was tied and gagged, and threw him down on a mattress that was lying on the floor in the basement. Smith stayed downstairs with Herb and Kenyon, while Hickock continued searching for the safe. After some time, Hickock returned, irritated and mad, because he could not find the safe, and Herb kept saying he didn't have a safe. Running out of time, the 2 men started debating what they should do, when Smith, out of the blue, bent down and slit Herb's throat, then proceeded to shoot him in the head with a shotgun. Moments later, Smith and Hickock went into the adjoining room where Kenyon was bound, gagged, and terrified, still laying on his pillow, and mercilessly shot him in the head as well. The 2 men then started towards the upstairs bedroom, where Bonnie and Nancy surely heard the gunshots. They could do nothing while they heard the men getting closer and closer. Hickock and Smith went into Nancy's room first, where they coldly walked up to her and put the shotgun to her head and pulled the trigger. They then repeated this horrifying action in Bonnie's room. The two men then ransacked the house, looking for the safe and any valuables. The two men fled the scene, taking with them Kenyon's portable radio, a pair of binoculars belonging to Herb, and $48 in cash. Herb always paid in checks, and there was never a safe at his residence. Himself and his family was murdered for some binoculars, a radio, and $48. Their bodies were sadly found by two of Nancy's classmates who came to visit her. Smith and Hickock were found and arrested in Las Vegas, Nevada on December 30th, 6 weeks after the murders, and were extradited back to Kansas, where they stood trial in the Finney County Courthouse in Garden City, Kansas. Smith and Hickock were both found guilty and sentenced to death. On April 14, 1965, they were both hanged at the Kansas State Prison near Lansing. Hickock was executed first and pronounced dead at 12:41 a.m. Smith followed shortly after and was pronounced dead at 1:19 a.m. When the sheriff that had solved the Clutter murder case passed, he was buried in the same cemetery overlooking the Clutter family he brought justice to. Although this incident happened over 65 years ago, there are still some living relatives of the Clutter family, so please be sensitive and leave your condolences down in the comments. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. And as always, keep an open mind, and I'll see you in the next one.